Okay, here we go. Kinesiology 223. This is chapter 23. Still talking about children and sports psychology. Presentation number 2. And this is the role of friends in youth sports. Pretty straightforward. It's a lot of stuff we talked about before, but they kind of delve in a little bit deeper here and they talk about affiliation motive. And when you have a child who's playing a sport, it provides the opportunity for them to learn new skills, etc., but also allows them to be involved with other children of their age who are also somewhat like-minded because they're all playing the same sport. And it allows them to make friends within their same social milieu, right? They're all together doing the same thing, playing the same sport. And this process, includes several different things, but one of which is peer relationships and children's psychological development. And it's a matter of understanding where that child is in the process of their own psychological development. I am not going to get fully exhaustive on this part of it, but you have to understand that friends and peers play a major role in the psychological development of children. It's not like there isn't an influence from friends and peers. They are heavily influencing each other in different roles. And one can imagine if an athlete gets out of a particular sport and goes to a different sport, that you're going to have a different social structure. Even if they play the same sport and they go from perhaps house league to travel to high school, those are going to provide different environments and different influences on that athlete. So friends and peers, they're linked to the child's sense of belonging and self-acceptance, but that has a direct influence on their self-esteem and their motivation. If they're kind of playing lone wolf and they're not really engaging with the other student or the other athletes, excuse me, my goodness, they end up having a disassociation with their peers and the sport. And they've identified kind of negative and positive dimensions to this. So with the negative and positive, let's see if I get these here. There we go. Positive. You have on one side companionship, you have play association, increased self-esteem, help and guidance, and pro-social behavior, intimacy, and others. And on the negative side, you have conflict, unattractive personal qualities, betrayal, inaccessibility to others. I will point this out though, if you're coaching a team, you can help drive some of these cultural artifacts in the actual program itself. You can work on having two athletes. You can create a situation where two athletes work together, companionship. You can have where they're working on a particular skill together, and it's not a combative or competitive environment, pleasant play association. And they have the case where both are learning something and it becomes a win for both athletes. It helps with self-esteem. You could have ways where you increase the interaction between your athletes on your team and have a pro-social environment. So there's different ways you can go ahead and do this, right? And there's ways you can kind of push your team culture into the positive dimensions and out of the negative dimensions. Excuse me. Sport friendship quality scale. 6 aspects of sport. Let me get myself screwed over here. And you have these 6 things are self-esteem, loyalty, things in common, championship, conflict resolution, and conflict, something or other. I'll fix that in 1 second. With that, I'm going to go ahead and scroll this over. With peer relationships, you have the points they make out here are girls were more apt than boys to identify emotional support as a positive feature. And it's kind of the basic differentiators you have in a team culture of softball players than baseball players or other female-oriented sports or male sports as they're trying to push in this book. And I agree with a lot of these because I think from a social standpoint and just social, if you will, societal norms and social norms, I think you have some differences between boys and girls in sports and I think they're apparent in terms of how they interact and the competitiveness, et cetera. Now that kind of starts to wash away when you get into the higher levels of sport because it becomes wildly competitive when you get into like a high school softball program or college softball program as opposed to a youth softball program, but I digress. So you have this sport friendship quality scale, and the scale itself, it measures these aspects of sport friendships, and they include things like we saw here before, self-esteem, loyalty, things in common. I'll scroll it over here so you can see it. things in common, there's my mouse, companionship and pleasant play. They show conflict resolution and conflict as well. So I'm right there, right, in the way I typed it. And there we go. And they break it down to the bullet points you see here, and you can pause and read through. I'm not going to belabor this process by reading through it word by word for you. But what you're finding is study after study after study in this column from 2013, 2016, 2020, 1999, 2016. You can go right down the list and see the different effects that you have in psychological development when we're talking about peer relationships. And, you know, this is true in different group environments. And I want to point this out down here. Children taking part in both sport and music activities saw or view their friendships in each activity differently. Best sports friends were perceived as being particularly more encouraging and supportive compared to music friends, although having positive friends was a source of enjoyment, competency, motivation, and lower anxiety in both sport and music. So again, it's interesting when you start talking about the dynamics of boys sports and girls sports, but also when we're talking extracurricular and co-curricular activities in a school environment, how they note specifically here, the perception and the results that you saw in the study provided that it was different. It was different in an athletic environment than a different extracurricular activity like music or band. Not saying it's wrong, not saying it's right or good nor bad, just stating the fact that what they found in that study is that you had a different perception by the participants that the athletes were more encouraging and more supportive. Just an interesting takeaway there. Peer relationships and children's psychological development. So research, it shows that peer relations had a great deal to do with motivation for physical activity and the effects of sport and physical activity on the person. And I would agree with that in terms of if you have friends that all want to go out and play outside, you're going to be outside playing outside. If you want friends that all want to hang out inside, you're not going to be that active. Now, not all are positive. So they found, Partridge and Knapp, they studied peer conflict and in adolescent females and discovered that feelings of jealousy were the primary cause of conflict between teammates. This involved jealousy both on the field and off the field. They had personality differences between teammates, and there was significant influence, such as negative comments from parents, were also identified as causes of conflict. So, as a coach, you perhaps can control some of the things in your environment, but it's difficult to control the interactions when they're outside of your purview, when they're at home, whether with them, as a group at school, or even if the parents make some comments. Now, you as a coach can maybe have some continuing education for your coaches to provide to the parents to be able to kind of disseminate across the team. Here's how we operate as a team. Here is our culture. And we did that in youth football. Myself and the person who was the head coach, he was exceptional. And he was exceptional at stating and setting expectation on the front end. Here are the things that we don't do as parents, and here are the things we will not do as coaches to your children on the practice field, on the game field, and here are the things we won't do when we're in a game. But here are the things we will do for your children when we're on the practice field, when we're in a game. And here's the communication we're going to have you. He was exceptional at doing that, and that's where I just learned that little takeaway from. And I would urge you to really think that through if you're going to become a youth coach. It's that communication you have and setting expectation with the parents that is key in the whole process. So peer interaction in sport can have the negative consequences that we just talked about through here. And when you read through this, you have this kind of decreased cohesion, you have some anxiety and competition, increased negative emotions, deteriorated performance. These were the things that we talked about in the previous chapter, but notice how if you as a coach, don't set the environment to try to tamp down things like jealousy per se and some of the negativity they can have on a team. It can cause some issues and have some flow through into performance. So I would urge you to set that culture as a coach. Friendship in sports. Time should be allocated for children to be with the friends and make new friends. And this is something where when you're in a particular sport activity, your athletes will already, kind of commingle with one another, but sometimes you have to create the commingling. You have to say, no, no, John and Jim, I know you two are friends. Go over and partner up with Rob. And you have a shuffling of the deck and you rearrange and randomly assign people to different people so they get to know other athletes on their team and create other friendships. And this is pretty darn key here when you start talking about what happens in that process. Peer support and relations were associated with prolonged engagement, meaning the athletes felt a greater sense of belonging to the team, greater sense of belonging to their teammates, and it encouraged a sense of kind of it created a sense of a positive culture, but also encouraged a positive reinforcement cycle for the students or for the athletes. My goodness. And so, you look at this and you look at this process and you go, in an effort to enhance self-esteem among youngsters participating in physical activity, coaches and parents should encourage this positive peer reinforcement. And I'm stressing this yet again, that it's like, you almost have to have like a pack model, parent, athlete, coach. All three of those are in the triangle for working with youth sports. And your parents have to be on the same page as you, the coach, and the culture you're creating to create this positive coached environment for the youth athletes. All right, I'm signing off and going to the next one.